Hey guys, this is Grace and welcome back to my channel. We are on process video number 2, which showcase cards number 6 through 10 with my latest 10 handmade cards, 1 homemade kit. So let's start off with this. This is the leftover of the the dry embossed frames that I made with white cardstock and the Reese embossing folder that I pulled for this particular kit. And this time I wanted to color the frames in, but I wanted to see if I can use my distressed ink, because as you remember with process video number 1, I wasn't liking the look of it when I was using some of the alcohol markers, especially the blue one, but I still love the blue color, and so I wanted to see if by using a distressed ink that would work. And it actually, I like the results of it because I colored in the whole thing, and I think that's the trick to that. If you wanted to color in your embossed items, I think color all of it versus just kind of coloring the raised parts or parts of it, it just looks better. And then of course, because this is a distress, I use a distressed ink, I can do a little bit of kind of water splatters on there. I think I did use a little bit too much of the water splatters, but it I love the effect of it. And I wanted to keep this card masculine because I don't have a lot of masculine cards, so I'm going to try to avoid using any flowers or any girly items in this particular card, and I ended up really liking it. So I decided that I was going to use this pattern paper, but when I cut it out, I actually, because it has a very subtle design, but I cut it in the wrong angle. There's a particular design on that paper that just goes one way, and so I cut it kind of the wrong way for the orientation of the card that I wanted. And so thankfully I had another piece of that specific pattern paper in my in the card in the pattern paper pack that I have, and so I was able to just grab a new sheet and then cut it the right way. So here I am fussy cutting the frames now because I set it aside to dry a little bit. And the biggest frame would of course hold my sentiment, and I found that the bottom piece was a little bit too big. I wanted the frame to just center on that top pattern paper versus it going over on the other pieces of paper. So I'm going to use 3 frames here, and I'm going to just lay it again. Like I said, I wanted the frames to stay on the top of it. So if you're new to my channel or you've not seen a series, what I do is I put together a card kit from all of, or not from all, but from products that I already have in my stash, and then I make 10 cards with it, and it has really helped me to fall in love again with the stuff that I already have in my stash, but at the same time I am able to create new things with them. So I really like this, and I hope these videos have inspired you to create your own kit as well and make some cards with them. So I decided to ink up the edges of the pattern paper with the same blue ink, just to tie everything together, and also it makes it stand out against the orange card base. Adhering everything with some dots of roller tape. That one's from Glue Dots. And then I'm just going to adhere everything. Now I decided to just adhere the 2 frames, the 2 smaller ones, with adhesive and with regular adhesive, and then foam adhesive with the center. And I'm sorry that that video was pretty short. So now on to card number 7. And so I had stamped the flowers first with distress ink, and then fussy cut them, and then I'm pulling out that already black heat embossed thank you sentiment on vellum, and I've also die cut some pattern papers with a stitched rectangle die from Memory Box, and I'm gonna do a little bit of kind of a geometric type of card here with the 4 rectangles on the top and the bottom, and then the sentiment in the center. So I'm going to be using my T-square ruler just to make sure that my first rectangle will be um, centered, or will be straight, and then I'm just going to eyeball the bottom one there. So if I had a square die cut, it would have been much better, because then you wouldn't have that space on the sides, and you'll have a little bit more space on the center for the sentiment. But I don't have a stitched square die. That is on my list of things that I wanted to buy, but right now I'm on a spending freeze because I just have a lot of stuff on my stash, so I'd rather use up the stuff that I have. So here I'm going to decide, okay, I want to dress up the flower because that's just how my mind works. That needs to have a center for a finishing look, but I didn't really like how the sequence was not standing out against the orange of color of the flowers. So I'm just going to use the sequence on the top and the bottom piece, and then I am going to pull out, oh, I guess I didn't pull out my Pro Pen. I thought I did. But I would have used Pro Pen for that if I were to do it again. Okay, so this is another piece of that skyscraper paper that I really love, but this time I'm going to do a horizontal type of card, and again, I wanted to keep it simple because of the modern look, and so I just heat embossed the sentiment "Thank you" with some gold embossing folder. And again, this was one of those products in my stash that I had forgotten that I loved. I love the look of this gold embossing, and so I will do a lot more embossing with gold in the future. And that was it. That was card number 8, and it was so simple, but yet it was one of my favorites from this set. So we are on card number 9, and what I did was, so I had leftovers of the mint cardstock, because I just used that for card bases, and I had a 12 by 12 piece of that, and so I ran my embossing folder a few times through with it, so that it will create the longer panel of the frames. And I wanted to do a shaker card for this, and I wanted to emphasize one of the frames, and so I'm trying to center that, making sure that that's centered, that will be centered on my card front. And then I was running out of papers here, and so I'm going to kind of do some strips of paper on the back, making it look like it's one whole piece when it's really not. So I'm going to first of all cut a little window out of this embossed mint paper, and I'm just using a craft knife and a craft mat, and I'm going to just cut the window out of that if I could. There it is. So there's my window, and I still think that it needs to be centered a little bit, so I'm going to trim a little bit more over on one side, and there's my frame. And so I'm going to cut this. I've cut the papers a little bit smaller than the card base, so you'll see a little bit of the card base as a frame. And so I have that the brown diagonal paper, and again, I only had a strip of that, so making it look like it's a whole strip, but I really don't have that. I'm just going to put it on the sides, and I'm going to add the mint paper on the center, so nobody will ever know that that brown piece of paper wasn't a full sheet. And so that will be a good idea if you're just using scraps of paper. So there you have it. And that part of the pink one, the pink cardstock, is actually peeking through the window, and I love that idea. So I've pre-heat embossed the thank you sentiment on white using just black powder, and I like that too. So it's coming together. Now I have to build my window. So I'm pulling out a transparency paper, and I'm going to add that to the back side of my frame, and I'm just going to trim the edges of that, trim the excess, and then I will add some foam. And this one is, I think it's a Scotch brand. I got that on Amazon, and I love it because I can cut it into thinner strips, and then just fill it in. So I'm going to cut a little bit more, making sure that that fits my frame, and then that little window is where I'm going to put my my sequence. So I want this whole panel to be raised, so it'll be easier. It won't, look warped when I do mail it. So I added a few more foam adhesive to the back side of it. Now the images on, or the dry embossed frames was not, um, it wasn't showing very well, and so I had a little bit of extra piece of that, and so I just ran this bronze ink pad that's from Studio Calico um, over that, and I like the look of it, so I did it for this piece. So make sure that if you're kind of have an idea, to kind of try it with a scrap paper first, or a leftover piece, before you do it on the actual piece that's going to go onto your card, so that if it doesn't work out, you won't feel too bad that you've gone through all that work and have to redo it. So I'm adding some adhesive to this center, and then I'm going to add some foam to the edges of it, because I want that sentiment to lay flat on my card, and because I have foam adhesive on the center, then I have to raise the sides of it. And then I'm going to pull out my Pro Pen and add a few more accents, and then I think I'm calling it good. And here is a close-up of that. So we are on card number 10, and this is a very simple card. I just wanted to kind of um, change it up a little bit. I feel like a lot of my cards for this particular set have a lot of very strong edges, rectangles, big and small. So I decided to do some circles with this one. I've pulled out some of this gray paper, and I've cut the circles out with a nesting die from my favorite things, and I did so because it's nesting dies. I could do two dies that's close together in size, or next, the sizes are next to each other, and I could create a frame. And so that's what I did with the black bold pattern paper here. So I'm just creating a frame. I'm sure you don't need to do a frame, or I could have easily just cut the black with a bigger circle, and then the gray one with the circle that's smaller, an eighth of an inch smaller than that, and that would have created my frame too. But I like this kind of nestled in frame look, so I'm just gonna trim the edges of that. I did add the thin frames with some glue dots, mini dots, and then the circles, the bigger circles, I used a roller tape for that. So there is my card base. Now I wanted to just stamp this just for you, and it was the perfect stamp to fit in that circle, because it wasn't, the orientation of it was um, perfect for circle elements, or to put in circle shapes. So I'm using that bronze ink pad. I think I've only used it like twice in this kit, but I really like the color of it. And I'm actually going to pull that in, put it in my kind of items where I would gravitate towards, to kind of a space where I put all of the things that I use a lot. So that's going to go back in my stash, but it's going to be used again. So I wanted to dress up the circles with some sequins, and so pulling out, I like the flower sequins, so I'm going to add 3 of those, and then 2 of just the regular sequins, 2 on each of the clusters. And that card base is the mint green one. And I think that's going to do it for my card. Gotta clean up my space, make sure that the sequins go back in that little pack, and that's it. So I'm going to share with you what was left over from my kit, and a little bit of a look at the cards again. So here are what's left over my kit. Of course, a lot of these are products that I can put back in my stash. A lot of these are tools. These are the stamps and the die cuts that I used for this particular kit. And then here are the leftover papers. Those are some of the scraps, and here are some more scraps. And I only have, I think when I pulled this one, I only had like 3 or 4 sheets of that 6x6 paper from that pad, and so that makes me really happy, because that means that I was able to use up a lot of it. And then here is another look with the finished cards. All of the cards that have pearl pens on them have already dried, and so it's easy for me to handle them and stack them. So I really love how this turned out. There's a lot of modern look, of course, because of the papers, and I was able to make a few that's masculine, but of course a lot of them are feminine, but it's all good. And then here are just a couple of extra cards that I used with the scraps. So in total I made 12 cards with this particular kit. So thank you so much for stopping by, and if you have not subscribed, please do so, and give this a thumbs up, and I will catch you guys another day. Bye.